Why it sucks to be born as a parrot. Parrots are colorful, intelligent, and they can even mimic human speech. On the surface, they seem like the dream pet, exotic, entertaining, and even capable of bonding with their owners like a dog or cat. It's no wonder so many people are drawn to them. But behind those bright feathers and charming personalities lies a reality that's rarely talked about, a life of isolation, boredom, and emotional suffering. In the wild, parrots fly freely through vast rainforests, communicate constantly with their flocks, and form lifelong bonds. But when they're born into captivity, especially into the pet trade, their lives are anything but natural. They become decorative accessories, locked in cages that crush their spirit, surrounded by humans who rarely understand their needs, physically or emotionally. This isn't just a sad story about mistreated pets. It's a spotlight on how being one of the most intelligent birds on Earth can actually be a curse, depending on where you're born. Here's why being born as a parrot might be one of the most tragic fates in the animal kingdom. 1. Parrots are way too smart for captivity. Imagine having the mind of a young child, filled with curiosity, energy, and a need for connection, but spending your entire life locked inside a small room with nothing to do and no one to talk to. That's what life is like for many captive parrots. Parrots are among the most intelligent creatures on the planet. Species like the African gray, the blue and gold macaw, and the cockatoo have demonstrated cognitive abilities on par with human toddlers. Roughly the intelligence level of a 3 to 5-year-old child. They can learn words, recognize shapes, solve puzzles, count, understand cause and effect, and even grasp simple concepts of time and emotions. But that high intelligence comes with a price. Parrots don't just enjoy mental stimulation, they require it. In the wild, they spend their days flying dozens of miles foraging for food, navigating complex social hierarchies, and engaging in constant vocal and physical interaction with their flock. Every hour of their life in the wild is filled with activity, purpose, and connection. Now contrast that with captivity. Most parrots in human homes live in cages, often too small for even a single wing flap. Their toys rarely change. Their routines are predictable, dull, and devoid of the rich sensory input they're built to crave. They are fed at the same time, given the same food, and kept in environments with minimal variation. Over time, the lack of stimulation begins to erode their mental health. A parrot with nothing to do is not just bored, it is suffering. Without sufficient enrichment, many parrots develop serious behavioral issues. They may begin to scream incessantly, seeking the social contact they're hardwired for. Others turn inward, plucking out their own feathers in frustration, or chewing their skin until they bleed. A self-destructive behavior that mimics cutting or other self-harming behaviors in humans. Some birds develop repetitive behaviors, like swaying side to side or head bobbing, signs of neurological distress or learned helplessness. Aggression is also common. A once friendly parrot may lash out, bite, or become withdrawn, not because it's bad or mean, but because it's being denied the life its brain was built to live. Even in homes with well-meaning owners, parrots are often misunderstood. A child might poke at the cage or shout, stressing the bird out. Adults may think a few hours outside the cage is enough. It's not. Without constant mental challenges and consistent social interaction, the bird's brain begins to atrophy, and even the best human caretakers can't replicate a wild parrot's natural environment. No number of toys or YouTube bird sounds can replace the experience of flying with a flock or solving real-world problems to survive. Domesticated animals like dogs and cats have adapted over thousands of years to live with humans. Parrots, despite being bred in captivity, are still wild at their core. In the wild, parrots live in highly social flocks, some numbering in the hundreds. They rely on these groups for learning, grooming, safety, and emotional bonding. They form lifelong pair bonds and communicate through complex vocalizations. In captivity, they are often housed alone, or in homes where the humans don't understand their emotional needs. So imagine a child who knows hundreds of words, who craves affection, who wants to learn and explore. Now place that child in a locked room with no school, no friends, no games, and no one who speaks their language. That's the reality for many captive parrots. It's not that parrots can't live in human homes. Some do and live long, enriched lives with dedicated owners who go above and beyond to meet their needs. But for the vast majority, captivity fails them. Their intelligence becomes a curse, what should have been a blessing. Their bright, complex minds becomes the source of lifelong mental and emotional suffering. Parrots aren't too dumb to be pets. They're too smart for it. That's why being born as a parrot can be a tragedy. You enter the world with one of the most remarkable brains in the animal kingdom. Only to have it go to waste, locked in a cage meant more for human convenience than for your happiness. Two, they often outlive their owners. One of the most overlooked truths about parrots is their incredible longevity. While people often associate long lifespans with animals like turtles or elephants, parrots, depending on the species, can live anywhere from 40 to 80 years. Some African greys and macaws have even been documented living beyond that, well into their 90s. That kind of lifespan makes them more than just pets. They're lifelong companions, often outliving their original owners. But this longevity, while biologically remarkable, is a curse in captivity. Most people are not prepared to make a 70-year commitment to a pet. Think about it. A person may get a parrot in their 20s, expecting a decade or two of companionship. Fast forward 50 years, and that same bird may still be alive, and just as needy, just as loud, and just as emotionally complex. It's not a goldfish you can flush or a hamster with a few good years. It's a sentient, social, intelligent creature who forms deep emotional attachments and who expects consistency in its relationships. What happens when that consistency breaks down? The answer is heartbreaking, rehoming, and not just once. Many parrots are passed from one home to another as their original owners age, become ill, move, or simply cannot handle the lifelong demands of a parrot. Each rehoming is a traumatic disruption. A parrot bonds deeply with its human caretakers, much like a child would bond with a parent. Losing that bond is akin to losing a family. Each new home requires readjustment, trust rebuilding, and emotional resilience. Things that, over time, wear down even the healthiest bird. Some parrots are rehomed 5, 6, or even more times over their lifetime. With each transition, they risk being neglected, misunderstood, or abused by people who don't realize the full commitment parrots require. Some end up in shelters or sanctuaries, lucky if they can find specialized facilities that understand their care needs. But many others fall through the cracks. They are kept in isolation, ignored, or dumped entirely. Imagine being forced to change your entire life every decade, relearn who to trust, adjust to new routines, new cages, new voices. Over time, these transitions erode the parrot's ability to form lasting bonds. They lose trust in people. They grow fearful or aggressive. In a word, they become lost. This is not a rare outcome. In fact, it's disturbingly common. Parrot rescues and sanctuaries are overwhelmed with unwanted birds. Some sanctuaries report waiting lists in the hundreds. And for each bird in a sanctuary, countless others remain locked away in garages, basements, or spare bedrooms. Forgotten. You live 70 years and get rehomed 5 times. That's not a life. That's an identity crisis with feathers. If parrots were human, we'd call this abandonment. In the pet world, we call it rehoming. But for the parrot, it's trauma. Lifespan should be a blessing. But without people willing to make multi-generational care plans, it becomes a tragedy. That's why many experts now argue that parrots should never have been domesticated in the first place, or at least not in the casual way we see today. If someone chooses to bring a parrot into their life, it must come with a long-term plan. That means preparing for inheritance, choosing future caregivers, and ensuring your parrot's life is stable even after you're gone. Anything less is irresponsible. So yes, parrots can live longer than you. But that's not the victory it sounds like. It's a warning. A parrot's longevity isn't just about years. It's about the cost of surviving them. 3, they're not low-maintenance pets. One of the most damaging myths about parrots is that they're easy or low-maintenance pets. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, parrots are arguably among the most high-maintenance companion animals you could own. First, their dietary needs are complex. A healthy parrot diet is not just seeds. In fact, a seed-only diet is one of the quickest ways to shorten a parrot's life. They require a carefully balanced diet rich in fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, and specially formulated pellets. Even then, different species have specific dietary needs, and a slight imbalance can lead to malnutrition, fatty liver disease, or other chronic conditions. Then there's enrichment and mental stimulation. A bored parrot is a destructive parrot. These birds are constantly thinking, problem-solving, and observing their surroundings. They need daily interaction, new toys rotated regularly, foraging puzzles, trick training, and consistent social engagement. Without this stimulation, they quickly descend into boredom and frustration. Vet care is another major factor. Avian vets are specialists and often hard to find and expensive. Regular checkups, beak and nail maintenance, and emergency care for stress-induced conditions or infections all add up quickly. Parrots are excellent at hiding illness, which means that by the time symptoms appear, it may already be too late. Parrots are also incredibly loud. They squawk, scream, and chatter, not just occasionally, but as part of their daily routine. These sounds are not easily ignored. Many new owners are unprepared for the volume and frequency of parrot vocalizations, which often leads to complaints from neighbors or frustrated household members. On top of all that, parrots are messy. They scatter food, fling feathers, and drop waste frequently. Daily cleaning is required to maintain a healthy environment, and that's not even considering bath time, dust control, especially with powder-producing species like cockatoos, and cage upkeep. Yet despite all of these challenges, many people buy parrots for the wrong reasons. Their vibrant colors, their mimicking abilities, or simply because they look exotic and cool. What begins as fascination quickly turns into regret when the reality of parrot care sets in. As a result, many parrots end up neglected, not because their owners are cruel, but because they were misinformed. A parrot left in a cage all day, fed a basic seed mix, and spoken to once or twice is not being properly cared for. It's enduring a slow emotional and physical decline, often in silence. Result, many parrots suffer in silence, in homes that never meet their needs. Being born as a parrot might look glamorous from the outside, but for too many it means living a life that's far removed from the freedom, stimulation, and connection they were evolved to experience. 4. The exotic pet trait is brutal. To fully understand why being born a parrot often means suffering, we need to look beyond cages and pet shops and into the dark underbelly of the exotic pet trade. The path that many parrots take to end up in someone's living room is not only heartbreaking, it's often criminal. In the wild, parrots are prized targets for illegal poaching. Despite international laws like CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, the illegal bird trade is a multi-billion-dollar global industry. Many of the most desirable parrots, like African greys, Amazons, or macaws, are stolen from their native habitats, often as chicks plucked directly from nests. These birds, barely feathered and still reliant on their parents, are taken in the dead of night by poachers who destroy entire nesting sites to meet demand. From there, the journey gets worse. Captured parrots are smuggled in horrifying conditions, hidden in suitcases, stuffed into PVC pipes, crammed into overcrowded cages with no food or water. Mortality rates are staggering. According to some estimates, for every parrot that survives the journey to a buyer, at least 4 to 9 others die along the way. They suffocate, starve, overheat, or succumb to injury and stress. It's a massacre disguised as commerce. And even parrots bred in captivity are not safe from exploitation. Commercial breeding facilities often prioritize profit over welfare. Birds are bred in crowded, unsanitary conditions, treated like egg-laying machines. Chicks are pulled from their parents too early to make them tame, leading to emotional stunting and behavioral issues later on. Many are never properly socialized or vetted for health before being sold to the highest bidder, often someone with little to no understanding of their care needs. The exotic bird industry has become incredibly good at marketing parrots as quirky, talking pets, but the truth is far from whimsical. Every bird in a pet store is either a survivor of a horrific supply chain or the product of a system built on suffering. That cute talking parrot in the pet store might be one of the lucky ones, because thousands more died getting there. Beyond the physical trauma, there's an ecological cost. Many parrot species are now endangered or critically endangered, in large part due to illegal poaching and habitat loss. The demand for exotic pets puts direct pressure on wild populations. In some areas, poaching has driven parrot numbers so low that entire ecosystems have started to unravel. These birds aren't just colorful ornaments. They play vital roles in seed dispersal and forest health. Efforts to regulate the trade have been slow and patchy. While countries like the U.S. have banned the import of wild-caught parrots, enforcement is inconsistent. Loopholes, lax regulations, and a thriving black market allow traffickers to continue business as usual. Online marketplaces and social media have only made things worse, providing easy access for buyers and sellers to connect under the radar. Meanwhile, sanctuaries and rescues around the world are left to pick up the pieces, trying to rehabilitate emotionally and physically scarred birds, many of whom have never known anything but trauma. These organizations are often underfunded, overcrowded, and fighting an uphill battle against a pipeline of suffering that never seems to stop. Captive breeding advocates may argue that breeding parrots in captivity reduces pressure on wild populations. But this argument falls apart when you consider the ongoing illegal trade, the poor conditions of many breeding operations, and the sheer number of unwanted parrots already in existence. Breeding more only fuels demand, and demand keeps the wheels of suffering turning. The brutal truth is this: parrots were never meant to be pets. Their beauty, intelligence, and vocal mimicry, the very traits that make them attractive to humans, are the same traits that make them deeply unsuitable for captivity. And yet, the market keeps pushing them as commodities, ignoring their needs in favor of novelty and profit. So when you see a parrot behind glass in a pet store, understand what it took to get there. The story behind that bird isn't one of joyful domestication. It's one of stolen freedom, trauma, and exploitation. It's not just a cute bird, it's a survivor. And for every survivor, there are countless others that never made it out of the box. 5. Social creatures trapped in solitude. To understand a parrot's suffering in captivity, you need to understand just how deeply social they are. In the wild, parrots are never alone. They live in tightly knit flocks, sometimes hundreds strong, where every member plays a role, foraging, calling out dangers, grooming each other, raising young, and simply keeping one another company. Parrots form strong pair bonds that can last for life. These aren't just reproductive partnerships. They are genuine emotional connections. Bonded parrots preen one another, synchronize calls, feed each other, and even grieve when one partner dies. That's not an anthropomorphic fantasy. It's observable, documented behavior. Their need for social interaction isn't a luxury. It's the core of who they are. But in captivity, that core is often denied. Most pet parrots live alone. Maybe they get a few hours a day of human interaction, maybe less. Their flock becomes a distracted human family that leaves for work or school for most of the day. Some parrots spend 20+ hours a day in a cage, in a quiet room, with no one to talk to and no one who speaks their language. It's easy to assume that a colorful bird perched silently in a cage is fine, but parrots are masters of masking distress until it finally erupts. That eruption often takes the form of self-destructive behavior. Feather plucking is one of the most common and visible signs of psychological distress in parrots. A bird may start by over-preening out of boredom or stress, but over time, it becomes compulsive. Some parrots strip their chest bare. Others go further, chewing their skin raw or creating open wounds on their legs and wings. Headbanging is another disturbing behavior. A parrot will repeatedly strike its head or body against the cage bars, walls, or perches. These actions, often misinterpreted as aggression or bad behavior, are the parrot's desperate way of coping with isolation, anxiety, and overstimulation in the wrong ways. Then there's the silence. A parrot that stops vocalizing altogether is in deep trouble. These birds are natural communicators. If one goes quiet, it's not peace, it's depression. Scientists and avian behaviorists now recognize these behaviors as emotional disorders, not unlike PTSD, anxiety, or compulsive disorders in humans. Many of the same stress hormones and neurological patterns seen in traumatized people also appear in parrots subjected to long-term isolation or neglect. Some parrots become so emotionally damaged that they no longer accept human interaction, no longer trust, and no longer want to bond. Their psychological scars run deep and often, tragically, they are deemed unadoptable by rescues and left to live out their days in isolated sanctuaries. And yet we still pretend they're simple animals. We say they mimic us, but maybe we're the ones ignoring their cries for help. We marvel when parrots mimic our words, but miss the deeper tragedy. They talk because they're trying to connect. In the wild, vocalizing is how parrots maintain social bonds. When they call to you, they are calling for their flock. When they mimic your voice, they are trying to join your world. And when you walk away or ignore them, their brains interpret it the same way a child might interpret abandonment. This need for companionship is not something you can fulfill with a mirror, a bell, or a few minutes of shoulder time. A parrot needs meaningful, consistent social interaction every day, whether that's with another bird or with a human who treats them as a full emotional being. Unfortunately, many people who buy parrots don't understand this. They think a talking bird will be a fun novelty. What they get instead is a being that demands as much attention, stimulation, and emotional connection as a toddler for decades. And when those needs aren't met, the parrot suffers, silently at first, then visibly, then desperately. Parrots aren't antisocial by nature. They are suffering because their deepest instinct, to be part of a social group, is being violated every single day they spend in solitude. To deny a parrot companionship is to deny it its most basic emotional need. And yet thousands of parrots spend their lives in lonely cages, misunderstood and misinterpreted. Their voices dismissed as noise or annoyance. Their pain is not metaphorical, it's real, measurable, and avoidable. The truth is simple. A parrot without a flock is a mind unraveling. Parrots are breathtaking creatures, vibrant, intelligent, emotionally rich. They can mimic our words, learn our routines, and even express affection in ways that feel strikingly human. But this beauty, this brilliance comes at a cost. Because parrots are not toys. They are not decorations. They are not conversation pieces. They are wild animals, born with instincts, emotions, and social needs that are almost impossible to fulfill in captivity. And yet thousands are bought every year by people who don't know what they're getting into. Some are attracted by the talking, others by the colors, or the perceived uniqueness of owning an exotic pet. But few understand the reality that a parrot demands more care, more time, more emotional commitment than almost any other pet. If you can't meet a parrot's intense needs, mentally, physically, and emotionally, then don't buy one. Full stop. These birds don't just want stimulation, they need it. They don't just enjoy company, they crave it. Without those things, they deteriorate. They scream, self-mutilate, wither in silence. And too often, when the novelty wears off, they're forgotten, locked away, rehomed endlessly, or dumped into overburdened sanctuaries. This isn't just about being a responsible pet owner. It's about recognizing that not all animals are meant to be pets in the first place. Parrots are one of the clearest examples of what happens when we value beauty over well-being and curiosity over compassion. So what can you do? Start by not buying a parrot. If you truly love these creatures, there are better ways to support them. Donate to parrot rescues. Support wildlife conservation projects that protect their habitats. Volunteer at sanctuaries. Share educational resources. Use your voice to help theirs be heard. Because the truth is, parrots don't need more cages. They need more advocates. Think twice before buying a parrot. Share this video to spread awareness. Let's give these birds the dignity they deserve. Being born a parrot should be a gift, not a life sentence. Let's make sure it's not.